to Deep Sleep Stories. If these stories have helped you through restless nights, please leave a review. Reviews are what help this podcast grow, reach more listeners, and stay alive. Without them, even something meaningful can slowly disappear. So if this show has brought you comfort, that small act truly helps keep it going. Now, settle in, and let's begin.
Welcome, and thank you for being here with Deep Sleep Stories. Tonight you'll drift into a warm, golden orchard where lemon trees rest beneath the gentle gaze of the sun and where every breath feels like a soft sigh of ease. Settle in, just as you are. Let your shoulders fall away from your ears. Let your jaw loosen, your tongue resting comfortably, your eyes growing heavy behind their lids. Feel the surface beneath you, steady, supportive, patient. Imagine it holding you the way the earth holds a sleeping seed. Without effort, without hurry, with quiet devotion. Breathe in slowly, as though the air is cool and clean, and breathe out as though you are setting down a bundle you've carried a long time. Again, a calm inhale and a longer, gentler exhale. With each breath, the day softens at the edges, dissolving like mist under morning light. In your mind, a pathway appears. It is pale and smooth, warmed by sunlight. Around it, leaves shimmer softly, and somewhere close by, the scent of citrus drifts on a lazy breeze, bright, sweet, and comforting. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to solve anything. You only need to be carried slowly into the hush of a sunlit grove. And as you continue breathing, your place in the story gently shifts, like a boat turning with the current, until you can simply watch it unfold. Far from any hurried road, there was a valley that seemed to belong to afternoon itself. The sky above it was a wide, patient blue, and the air had a honeyed warmth that settled into the skin like a familiar blanket. Rolling hills cupped the land, and on their slopes, lemon trees grew in soft abundance, rows and clusters and wandering groves, as though someone had scattered them with a generous hand. In that valley, the sun did not blaze or demand attention. It watched kindly. It warmed stones and pathways. It painted the leaves with a quiet gloss and turned every lemon into a small lantern of gold. The light felt thick and slow there, as if time had chosen to rest. A traveler came to the valley on an unremarkable morning, though nothing truly felt unremarkable once she stepped beneath the trees. Her name was Mira, and she carried very little, just a light satchel, a small canteen, and a calm curiosity that had guided her to many gentle places. She'd been walking for days, through fields and along streams, following no strict map, only the feeling that she was meant to find something warm and bright. When the valley opened before her, she paused. The lemon trees swayed as if greeting her, though the breeze was barely more than a whisper. The scent in the air was clean and sharp, like sunlight made into perfume. Beneath it all was the deeper smell of soil, warmed and alive, holding the steady promise of growth. Mira stepped forward. The path through the grove was not paved, but it was easy beneath her feet, packed earth scattered with pale petals and fallen leaves. sunlight sifted down in slow patterns, dappling her hands, her sleeves, her cheeks. Each time she passed a tree, the leaves made a soft, glossy sound, like the turning of pages in a well-loved book. She walked without hurry. The valley invited slowness, and she accepted. Her breath steadied. Her thoughts loosened their grip and began to drift behind her like ribbons trailing from a moving kite, no longer tangled, no longer tight. Somewhere deeper in the orchard, she heard water, not the rushing of a river, but the patient voice of a small stream threading its way through stones. She followed the sound, and the grove seemed to widen, opening into a shaded clearing where sunlight pooled on smooth rocks. The stream was narrow and clear. It moved with the calm confidence of something that knew it would arrive. Along its banks grew soft grasses and small white blossoms. A few lemons had fallen nearby, their skins bright against the earth. Mira knelt beside the water and dipped her fingers in. Coolness rose along her hand like a slow sigh. She cupped water and drank. It tasted of stone and shade and clean distance. When she stood, she felt lighter, as though the valley had taken a quiet portion of her tiredness without needing to be asked. A gentle sound, almost like a chime, seemed to come from the trees themselves. Mira listened. It was not metal, not glass, but something subtler. Leaves brushing, fruit swaying, branches shifting in harmony. She followed that delicate music as it led her onward. Soon the orchard began to reveal small signs that others had walked here before. A smooth bench beneath a tree, its wood sun-warmed. A low stone wall half covered in moss. A narrow archway formed from living branches, woven together as though the trees had chosen to clasp hands. Mira passed through the archway and the air changed. It became slightly cooler, touched with shade, as if she had stepped into the orchard's inner heart. The light was still golden, but softer now, filtered through thicker leaves. The scent of lemon deepened, layered with something faintly floral and sweet. In the center of this inner grove stood a small cottage, simple and quiet. Its walls were pale stone, and its roof was covered in green vines that spilled over the edges like slow waterfalls. A modest chimney rose from one side, though no smoke curled from it. Around the cottage grew herbs, silvery leaves, tiny blossoms, plants that looked cared for without looking forced. Mira stopped at the edge of the garden. She did not call out right away. She only watched, letting the stillness settle around her. The cottage seemed to be listening too, its windows reflecting the orchard like gentle mirrors. Then the door opened. An old gardener stepped out, not hurried, not startled, as if he'd been expecting her in the same way the valley expected sunlight. His hair was pale and fine, and his clothing was the color of sand. He held a small basket in one hand, and with the other he brushed a leaf from his sleeve. His eyes were kind, the sort of eyes that had watched many seasons pass and found something soothing in each of them. He looked at Mira as though she were a familiar note in a song. "You've found the lemon grove," he said softly. Mira nodded. She felt no need to explain herself. In this place, arrivals seemed explanation enough. The gardener smiled, and the smile carried the warmth of the sun without any glare. He stepped closer, stopping at a polite distance. The air between them smelled of herbs and citrus. "Rest, if you like," he said. "The orchard enjoys company that knows how to be quiet." Mira's shoulders eased even more. "Thank you," she murmured. The gardener motioned toward the bench beneath a nearby tree. Mira walked to it and sat. The wood was smooth, shaped by time and touch. Above her, lemons hung like soft lamps, their skins catching light and giving it back in a gentler form. A breeze moved through the leaves, and the orchard's delicate music returned. The gardener set his basket down and began to work among the herbs. He moved slowly, tenderly, as if each plant was a small creature that liked to be handled with care. He pinched stems, lifted leaves, loosened soil with his fingers. The motions were simple and calm, and Mira found herself watching them the way one watches waves. No need to interpret, only to follow. After a while, the gardener spoke again, as if continuing a conversation the orchard had started long ago. "This valley," he said, "is warmed by a sun that likes to linger. It doesn't rush across the sky. It takes its time. The trees have learned that rhythm." Mira listened. Her eyelids felt heavier, though she was still awake, still aware of the sweet, steady air. "Do you live here alone?" she asked. The gardener's hands paused for a moment, and he glanced toward the deeper trees. "Not alone," he said. "The orchard has many ways of being present. The sun, the water, the leaves. Even the fruit has its own quiet voice." Mira looked up at the lemons. She imagined each one holding a small story inside it, wrapped in bright peel, waiting patiently. The gardener lifted his basket again, now filled with a gentle mix of herbs and a couple of lemons. He walked toward the cottage and opened the door, holding it as if inviting the orchard's light to follow him inside. "Tea," he said softly, and it felt less like an offer and more like a natural next step. Mira rose and followed him into the cottage. Inside, the air was cooler and scented with dried flowers. Sunlight streamed through small windows, laying warm rectangles on the floor. Shelves lined the walls, filled with jars and bundles, herbs tied with string, lemons dried into fragrant slices, small stones that glimmered like pieces of moonlight caught and kept. A kettle sat on a small stove. The gardener moved with unhurried ease, pouring water, adding herbs, slicing lemon with a small knife that seemed old and beloved. The sound of the blade was gentle, like a whisper. The scent that rose from the fresh-cut citrus was bright enough to feel like a smile. Mira sat at a small table near the window. Through the glass, she could see branches swaying and leaves shimmering. The orchard seemed close, as if it leaned toward the cottage to listen. The gardener brought a cup and set it in front of her. The tea was pale gold, with a thin curl of steam rising like a soft ribbon. Mira wrapped her hands around the cup. Warmth seeped into her fingers. She took a slow sip, The flavor was lemon and honey and something green and calming, like walking through shade on a warm day. It eased her from the inside out, smoothing her breath, quieting her thoughts even more. The gardener sat across from her with his own cup. For a while they drank in silence. It was the kind of silence that did not ask to be filled. It simply existed, soft and supportive. Eventually Mira spoke, not because she felt she should, but because the words floated up gently, like a leaf on water. "This place feels different," she said, "as if the sun here knows a secret." The gardener's eyes crinkled with quiet amusement. "The sun does know a secret," he said. "Or perhaps it remembers one." Mira tilted her head slightly, inviting him to continue without needing to push. He set his cup down and looked toward the window. The light there seemed to move slowly, as if it were breathing. "Long ago," he said, "travelers came through this valley feeling heavy with the world. They carried worry in their shoulders, in their jaws, in the space between their brows. They wanted relief, but they did not know how to ask for it. They thought they needed answers." Mira listened, her hands still around the warm cup. "The valley had trees even then," the gardener continued. "Not as many as now, but there were enough. Lemon trees, bright and resilient. The sun watched the travelers and felt something gentle stir, an understanding that warmth can be a kind of medicine and that light can be a kind of language." Mira's breath slowed even more. She could almost imagine those travelers, dusty and tired, stepping into the grove and being met by scent and shade and golden fruit. "The sun lingered," the gardener said, "not to delay the day, but to soften it. It warmed the leaves until they shimmered. It sweetened the air, and the trees responded, offering their fruit, their fragrance, their quiet music. Travelers rested. They slept beneath the branches, and when they woke, they did not always have answers, but they felt lighter. They felt held." Mira's eyes drifted half closed. The story flowed through her like the tea, warm and calming. The gardener smiled as he spoke. Over time, the grove grew. The valley learned to welcome, and the sun, patient as ever, continued to offer its secret. Mira's voice was soft. "What secret?" The gardener's gaze returned to her. His eyes were gentle, and there was a small glimmer in them like sunlight on water. "That you do not have to carry everything," he said. "That there is always a place where you can set your burdens down. That even the brightest light can be gentle." Mira let that settle. The words felt like a blanket being drawn over her, not smothering but comforting. Outside, the orchard's leaves whispered. The stream murmured. Somewhere far away, perhaps a bird called once, then fell silent again. Mira finished her tea, and the gardener stood. "Come," he said quietly. "There is something the trees like to show visitors." He opened the cottage door, and sunlight spilled in. Mira stepped out behind him, and the warmth met her like a friendly hand. They walked through the inner grove along a narrow path lined with herbs and small stones. The gardener moved at a leisurely pace, and Mira matched it easily. The air smelled of citrus and green leaves and warmed earth. As they went deeper, the trees grew slightly taller, their branches bending in gentle arcs. The lemons here seemed brighter, as if the sun had kissed them longer. Light pooled beneath the trees in soft circles, and the shadows were tender, never sharp. They arrived at a small clearing where the ground was covered in pale petals and fallen lemon blossoms. In the center stood a single tree unlike the others, not larger, not older, but somehow more present, as if the orchard's attention gathered around it. The gardener stopped and placed a hand on the trunk. He did not speak right away. He simply stood there, palm resting against bark, eyes half closed, as though listening to a quiet heartbeat. Mira stood nearby, feeling the hush deepen. The air here seemed to hum with stillness. "This tree," the gardener said at last, "is where the sun rests when it is tired." Mira's gaze lifted to the branches. Lemons hung there, glowing softly. Leaves trembled in slow motion. It did not look magical in a dramatic way. It looked natural, like something that had always been true. "The sun is not only fire," the gardener continued. "It is also warmth. It is also comfort. It can be bright and still be kind. And sometimes even the sun wants to rest. When it does, it leans into this tree, and the tree holds it." Mira imagined it, the sun lowering itself gently, not sinking with urgency, but reclining, as one might recline into cushions after a long day. She pictured it pouring its warmth into the leaves until they gleamed, letting its light soften and spread like honey. The gardener motioned toward the ground. Beneath the tree, a patch of earth was smooth and inviting, as if shaped for someone to sit or lie down. "You may rest here," he said, "if you'd like." Mira hesitated only a moment, then lowered herself onto the soft earth. The petals were cool beneath her fingers. She leaned back, letting her shoulders meet the ground, letting her gaze drift upward through branches and sky. Above her, lemons swayed gently. Sunlight filtered through leaves in golden fragments. The air smelled sweet and clean. It felt as if the tree's presence wrapped around her, steady and quiet. The gardener sat a short distance away, on a flat stone, his hands resting loosely in his lap. He watched the grove without staring, attentive in the way a lighthouse is attentive, present, calm, guiding without insisting. Mira's breathing deepened. Her thoughts, already slow, grew even slower. The tree seemed to invite her into its rhythm. Inhale, exhale, soften, release. She lay there for a long while. The sun warmed her face, then drifted behind a cluster of leaves, cooling her slightly, then returned again. The changes were subtle, like the rise and fall of a gentle tide. As Mira rested, the orchard seemed to do something quiet and extraordinary. The sounds around her, leaves, stream, distant birds, began to blend into a single soft lullaby. Not a melody with a clear beginning or end, but a continuous, soothing presence. And within that presence, Mira sensed something like a story being told without words. The lemons above her were small suns, each one holding light in its skin. The leaves were hands spreading shade where it was needed. The breeze was a messenger, carrying calm from tree to tree. In the softness of that moment, Mira felt as if she were floating, not lifting away from the earth, but floating within herself, weightless in a safe, warm sea of air and light. The gardener's voice reached her, low and gentle, as though he spoke not to wake her, but to help her drift. "Some travelers come here looking for a sign," he said. "They think it must be something grand, but the orchard gives signs the way it gives fruit. Quietly, steadily, without drama." Mira's eyes remained half closed. She listened without effort. "Notice," the gardener said, "how the sun doesn't demand anything of the trees. It simply offers warmth, and the trees, in their own time, respond." Mira imagined warmth as something tangible, like a soft cloth laid over branches. She imagined the trees drinking it in slowly, turning it into leaves, into blossoms, into bright fruit. No rush, no strain, only an easy exchange. The gardener continued, "That is the valley's way. Offer, receive, rest, repeat." Mira's chest rose and fell in slow rhythm. Offer, receive, rest, repeat. The words were like smooth stones she could hold in her mind, cool and reassuring. Time drifted. The sunlight shifted slightly, though it still felt like afternoon. The valley seemed to hold the day in a gentle pause, as if it had decided that this moment was worth lingering in. At some point, Mira sat up slowly. She did not feel sleepy in a heavy way. She felt softened, as if the tight knots inside her had loosened. She brushed petals from her sleeve and looked at the gardener. He nodded as if he understood, without needing her to speak. Mira's gaze turned back to the tree. "It feels like the sun is closer here," she said softly. The gardener's smile returned, quiet and warm. "It is," he said, "not closer in distance, but closer in spirit. Here the sun is allowed to be gentle. It doesn't have to prove itself." Mira stood, her movements slow and easy. The orchard around her seemed brighter, though perhaps it was only that she was noticing more. The leaves looked like they had been polished. The air looked like it could be poured into a cup. The gardener rose as well. "Walk with me," he said. "There is a path that circles the grove. It is a good path for letting thoughts settle." They began walking side by side, though not close enough to crowd. The path curved around the inner clearing, weaving between trees that bent their branches low, as if making protective arches. Sunlight streamed through gaps in the leaves, creating moving patterns on the ground. As they walked, Mira noticed small details: a line of ants carrying tiny fragments of leaf, a snail shell tucked beneath a stone, a cluster of blossoms opening with patient delicacy. The orchard was full of quiet life, each thing doing what it did without hurry. The gardener spoke now and then, but never for long. His words were like the stream, present, soft, never forcing the moment to move faster than it wanted. He pointed out a place where the stream widened into a shallow pool. Its surface reflected the lemons above, like floating coins of gold. He showed her a patch of herbs whose scent, when rubbed between fingers, seemed to cool the mind. He paused at a tree with a branch that curved like a cradle and said, "This is a good tree for listening." Mira stood beneath it and listened. The leaves here rustled in a slightly different way, as if the tree had its own accent. The sound was soothing, rhythmic, like a slow breath. They continued. The path led them to a low hill within the orchard. At its top was a simple stone seat warmed by the sun. From there, the valley spread out in a wide, golden view, trees upon trees, leaves shimmering, lemons glowing softly beneath the steady sky. Mira sat on the stone seat. The gardener stood behind her for a moment, then sat nearby, both of them facing the orchard like two quiet observers of a peaceful sea. From this height, the grove looked like a blanket of green stitched with gold. The sun hovered above it, not harsh but tender, bathing everything in warmth. Mira felt her eyelids grow heavy again, though she remained awake. She felt safe. She felt as if the valley had placed a hand on her shoulder and said, without words, "You can rest now." The gardener's voice was a low murmur. "When the sun begins to drift lower," he said, "the lemons glow a little more, not because they become brighter, but because the light becomes softer. It wraps around them. It lingers." Mira imagined the late sunlight, thick and golden, sliding through leaves and settling on fruit like a slow kiss. She could almost see it happening already, though the day still felt held in place. "I think," Mira said slowly, "I could stay here a long time." The gardener nodded. "You could," he said, "and even if you leave, the orchard will remain in you. You'll remember how the sun felt here, how it warmed without asking anything in return." Mira let those words drift through her. She imagined carrying this warmth with her like a small lantern, not heavy, not demanding, simply present. The orchard's sounds blended into a deeper quiet. The stream's murmur became softer at this distance. The leaves seemed to move more slowly. Even the air felt thicker, like a gentle cushion around everything. Somewhere below, a lemon dropped from a branch and landed in the grass with a soft, muffled sound. It did not feel like a disruption. It felt like a punctuation mark in a calm sentence. Mira's breathing was slow and steady. Her shoulders were loose. Her hands rested in her lap, palms warm. The gardener sat silently now. He did not need to fill the space. The orchard filled it on its own, with light, with scent, with the steady comfort of being alive and unhurried. As the sun slowly softened further, the valley seemed to turn even more golden, as if the light had melted into syrup and poured itself over the leaves. Shadows lengthened, but they were gentle shadows, full of warmth rather than chill. Mira's eyes drifted closed for a moment, then opened again. The view was dreamy, almost unreal, but comforting in its quiet beauty. It felt like the kind of place that existed in the space between waking and sleep. The gardener stood and offered his hand, not as a demand, but as a gentle invitation. Mira took it and rose. His hand was warm and steady like sun-warmed stone. They walked back down the hill, slower now. The path seemed softer beneath their feet. The orchard's scent deepened, and the air felt silky, like it had been brushed with honey. When they returned to the cottage, the gardener paused at the doorway. "You can rest here," he said, "or you can rest beneath the trees. Either way, the valley will keep watch." Mira looked around. The trees swayed gently, lemons glowing in the softening light. The stream murmured somewhere close by. The cottage waited quietly, safe and simple. Mira felt a deep, pleasant heaviness begin to settle in her limbs, the kind that comes not from exhaustion, but from comfort. She chose the orchard. The gardener led her to a spot beneath a tree near the cottage where the ground was smooth and covered with a thin layer of fallen leaves. He brought a soft blanket from inside and laid it down without a word, then placed a folded cloth beneath it like a small pillow. Mira lowered herself onto the blanket. She lay on her back, looking up at the canopy. Above her, the lemons glowed like small suns that had decided to stay close to the earth. The sky beyond the leaves was still pale blue, but it carried a hint of deeper color now, as if evening waited patiently in the wings. The gardener sat on the bench nearby, his presence calm and quiet. He did not speak again. He simply watched the trees, as though he were listening to something that did not need language. Mira's breathing became slower. Her thoughts became softer, less shaped, more like drifting clouds. The orchard's lullaby, the rustle of leaves, the distant stream, the hush of warm air, wrapped around her like layers of gentle fabric. The sun continued its slow, unhurried descent, though it still felt present, still felt kind. Its warmth lingered on Mira's cheeks and forehead. The air around her was fragrant with lemon and leaf and earth, a scent that seemed to soothe the mind as much as the body. The valley held her. The trees held her. The sun held her. And now as you listen, you can feel that same holding. Your breath is slow. Your body is heavy in the best way. The day, whatever it was, can drift away from you like a boat, untying from a dock, floating out onto calm water. The orchard remains, glowing softly beneath the sun. Lemon trees sway in patient rhythm. Leaves whisper. Fruit hangs like little lanterns, quiet and bright. Everything is gentle here. The sentences grow softer now, like footsteps moving into thick grass. The air is warm, the light is kind, the valley is calm. Let your shoulders sink, let your face relax. Let your breathing be easy. In the grove, Mira sleeps peacefully beneath the branches, warmed by the last tender touch of sunlight. The gardener sits nearby, still as a stone, watching over the quiet orchard. The stream murmurs its steady lullaby. The lemons glow faintly, as if holding small dreams inside their skins. You too can drift down into softness, down into quiet, down into sleep. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.